Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sheila Hession and I'm the Executive Director of Sales at the MGM National Harbor, and I'm Chair of the HSMAI DC Advisory Board. We're now in week 9 of this extremely tiresome pandemic, and since we're not able to meet in person, we're continuing our mission of education virtually. This is the third webinar in our series, and I thank all that have joined us thus far. Today's topic is finding success in the middle of the chaos, and our speaker is Bob Anderson, President of Star Performance. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about him. Bob's entertaining and upbeat presentation style has earned him rave reviews from many hospitality organizations. He served as a hospitality business coach, results-driven trainer, and business development consultant for more than 25 years. He presents a unique approach to sales and prospecting through his 3 systems: building the sales pipeline, building the culture of service, and point-of-contact reservation selling. Bob was named one of HSMAI's top 25 extraordinary minds in hospitality sales, marketing, and revenue optimization in 2015, and he's also a member of the HSMAI Sales Advisory Board. And for those listening in, if you have any questions for Bob, please enter them into the question box and we will be sure they get addressed. Also, please note that you will receive a link to today's recording. And with that, let's get started.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad that you are here. We're going to spend a little time together and talking about some topics. Obviously, this finding chaos in this middle of this interesting crisis that we're in. We have different things that we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about, we understand that some of you are furloughed. And we're going to talk about that. What can we do during that time? What can we do to turn that into a positive, if there is such a thing? And then some ideas for those of you who are working, but maybe remotely, or even some of you on site. How to get ourselves set up for that recovery. It's so very, very important. And please, I would love to have as many questions as possible. Text those or chat those to Sheila, and we'll pull those up. This is your call, not our call. We want you to feel open to ask those kinds of questions. Okay? So that's where we're going to get going. And again, HSMAI, I've been involved in HSMAI since the 90s. I started in HSMAI when before Bob Gilbert was the top dog. So I've got just the greatest respect for HSMAI. I was the chapter president here in Minneapolis. I took over for the Minneapolis or the Minnesota chapter after Jenny Thiessen went on to work with HSMAI, and those were some big shoes to fill. So let's jump in here and get rolling. Okay, so are you furloughed? And if you could, Kathy, turn to the next slide. So here's the deal. You're furloughed, now what? And we understand what a difficult time this is for everybody. I talk to people every single week that are in that situation. And it is a difficult situation. It's an emotional situation. What I find when I talk to people, they're telling me that they're experiencing and what they're feeling, what they're thinking. I mean, obviously, for many, it's a loss or reduction in income. That is very difficult when you have a family, when you got a mortgage, you got rent, you got cars, you got kids in school. That's a very difficult thing to work through. We're going to talk a little bit how to possibly work through some of those emotions. Obviously, you know, hospitality is hospitality. We are the kind of people that build relationships. We're the kind of people that care about other people. And so, of course, we worry about the health and safety of our family. We worry about all the friends we have and all those coworkers and customers that we have. That's a huge added stress. And then the fear of the unknown. That's the thing that, to me, in many ways, is the most frustrating. And maybe you all can agree with that. Not knowing what's going to happen. You know, and there's so many different things that you see on TV or read in newspapers. I tell you, it's so frustrating because, you know, I could watch TV show and I hear from their point of view is that this is not going to go away for 2 years. We're all going to be locked in our homes for 2 years, which can't happen. It just can't happen. And then I hear the other point of view that this should have never happened. We should have never stayed at home. We should just keep going, or we should get back immediately. And so they're so opposing views and nobody really knows. So the reality is we have to create our own mindset. We have to create our own plan, our own different way of thinking. No matter if it comes back quicker, if it takes longer, we have to get ourselves ready for it. And those are things that we can do now during this thing called furlough. So, next page, please. We are rolling here today. Now, let me start with this. Can there be anything positive about this situation? And I've talked to people who, in having this conversation, and people say, well, Bob, what can be positive about it? Well, it's really what you look for. I am an avid reader, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in our second part is how part of how we are going to self-educate ourselves during this time. We've got all these wonderful resources with HSMAI, but I'm going to try and make the case that we can't rely on others. We have to educate ourselves. One of the best books ever written, in fact, one of the most popular books ever written, was by a guy named Napoleon Hill. Many of you have probably read it. All of you, I'm sure, have heard of it. It's called the book called Think and Grow Rich. Now, this book was written in the 20s, and what happened is Napoleon Hill studied the most successful people in the world to find out what made them tick. And what it came down to was really their mindset, their outlook, how they dealt with adversity and things like this. So one of his many popular quotes is, every adversity, every failure, and every heartache carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. We're going to try and find that seed today. We're going to maybe get you to think a little bit in a different way than you've thought during these stressful times, to see where is that silver lining. How can we use this time for those of you who are furloughed, and quite frankly, for those of you that are still working remotely or on site? Changing that mindset is the most important thing we can do in this profession called selling. So there's always that seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. Now, when I say that, under number 2, I know some of you are thinking, slow down there, Bob. I think you've been kicked in the head one too many times. And I throw that in because some of you on the call that I've met know that I used to teach karate and fight in rings. I'm undefeated in the ring. I've had some state titles and things. And yes, I've been kicked in the head quite often, okay? But I will tell you from the bottom of my heart that I believe this quote. It's not out there. It's not craziness. It really is how we as humans work. Now, the other thing to consider is this is not a normal economic turndown. Many of you were working in our industry during the recession of 2008, 9, and 10, the mortgage and the banking, and that was a little self-imposed. That was a little something that we did to ourselves. This is different, obviously. This started out as a health crisis, which is now coupled into an economic situation that we're trying to dig ourselves out. But here's the deal, and I do believe this. All of us, everybody in this call, again, furloughed or not furloughed, we have the ability to change the mindset, okay? Which when we change that mindset, we will change our actions, which ultimately will affect the long-term post-COVID results. Again, as I'll end in our later on, I don't have a crystal ball. I went on Amazon. They're all sold out of crystal balls. I can't find one. We don't know if it's going to be late summer, fall, if it's going to be first quarter. But we do know it will come back. And I believe it'll come back strong. I really do believe there's going to be that pent-up demand that people talk about. But we want to be ready for that, and it's really some of our mindset. Kathy, if you could turn to the next page, please. Now, to change your outlook, you got to change the in-look, okay? Here's what I mean by this. I looked in my friends at Webster's College Dictionary. It's a fantastic book, and it's a great doorstop, by the way, too. So it's always got multi-purposes there. When I looked up what does the term furloughed mean, it says to lay an employee or worker off from work. So I want us to think differently. When I look at salespeople, and I've always thought this, and if you've sat in any of our large building our sales pipeline prospecting seminars that we've done, several of them for the DC chapter, I always allude to this. You see, in sales, we're never really employed. Okay? Here's what I believe every salesperson is truly self employed, or at least that's the way we should look at it. We always hear, and by the way, I watched the Holly Zoba and the John Rich session that they did for your chapter last month, and they do such a great job of setting the stage and teeing up some of these things. John talked about building your brand, talked about your value proposition. In many ways, he was leading into what I'm talking about here. In sales, think of yourself always as being self employed. Think of yourself as what I call a company called Me Inc. Okay? And go to number 3. What you all are is you are CEO, chief cook, and bottle washer of a company called Me Inc. Everybody, write that right down, Me Inc. And some of you not only are the chief cook and bottle washer of a company called Me Inc., some of you are now directors of homeschooling, okay? But when you really look at what you do, when you really look at how you are employed, how you make your living, if you realize that you were the owner of Me Incorporated, and when they talk about build your brand, you are the product. This will take it to a whole different way of thinking, and it will change maybe the way you do what you do in sales. And that's the things we're going to talk about. How to think differently, how to plan different, and ultimately, we want to talk about how we can act different, again, to help us with the recoveries. Now, let's talk about Me Inc. You might say, but Bob, I don't really believe that because I'm employed. When I'm not furloughed, I'm employed. Don't think of your employer in the legal sense, it's your employer, but think of them as your customer, okay? Some of you might have one customer. Maybe it's that XYZ hotel you work with. Maybe it's the ABC attraction. Maybe some of us in our chapter, we're with the Bright Lights AV, and your title is sales manager, director of sales, VP of sales, regional sales, whatever it is. But ultimately, you are Me Inc. You have a contract. Think of your employer as your customer. And when it comes to number 2, straight pay, straight commissions, I'm always amazed that people really are, they would say they would never work as straight commission. Oh no, I want a base plus plus. I want a draw plus. Well, in the end of it, when you really look at what we do, sales, here's the reality. We're all on straight commission. Because if you don't produce and book profitable business, you don't get paid. Eventually, we're all on straight commission. So how would you act differently? What would you think differently? What actions would you take that when this recovery happens for those you're working, if you were actually straight commission, what are some things you would do more of? What would some things you would try? Would it change the way that you sell? Would it change the way you perform? Would it change the way you face those fears that we all fear when we're selling? Very important to change that mindset, I believe. And the reality is, we always talk about rebooking business. We love to have those customers that at your hotel, your attraction, or if you're at your AV company, have become long-term relationship customers. Think of that employer has one customer that every year you got to renew that deal through what's called the annual review. Because ultimately, if we aren't producing the results, if we aren't doing the things, if we aren't outpacing our competition with all the stats we have, we're not going to stay employed. So we really are that one Me Inc. owner. Think of yourselves. We're going to talk about that in a second. All of you that are on this call now have achieved great things, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't invest in HSMAI. Your customer or employer wouldn't invest in HSMAI. All of you have done things that because you've developed unique skills. You do things that others can't or won't do. In fact, many of you, and I know some of you on this call, you make it look easy, okay? In fact, everybody, I want you to do this. Everybody stand up in your offices. I've never done this over a big broadcast. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody stand up. Okay, everybody standing up. Okay, here's what I want you. I want to take your right finger. I want you to lick it. I want you to stick it on your hip and go, staying I'm good. All at the same time. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I know this is corny, but work with me. 1, 2, 3, lick, stick, sizzle, and say, dang, I'm good as loud as you are. If you have kids in the other room, they're going to think you've lost it. And if you're working on site, the rest of people will know you've lost it. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, lick, stick, dang, I'm good. You are good. Now, you make it look easy. One thing I always notice is in a hotel, when we're back on site or back in the office, do you ever get those looks from people say, oh, those salespeople got it made? They get to wear nice clothes. All they do is walk around with people. They get to go have lunch. They get to go to conferences. They get to go to meetings. But they don't always understand how not everybody can do what we do. Not everybody can pick up that million-pound phone. That not everybody has that innate ability to work through the no's, through the pressure and all of those things. Be proud of what you've done to get to the point of Me Inc. And here's the thing, and I do absolutely believe this. I've had family members over the years. My oldest sister told me years ago, Bob, why don't you go get a real job? Why do you want to be in sales? And I don't understand that thinking. Here's the thing about Me Inc. and the things that'll help you in the recovery. You have the power to determine your path, your lifestyle, and your income. I know many people in hospitality sales that have worked their ways up into regional position, VP positions, into a nice living. Yes, we are in an interruption right now. But if you have that mindset that I'm self-employed, I'm the CEO of Me Inc., and I can craft my lifestyle. I don't have to do what others want me to do. I can have the path that I want. And part of that, again, is change your mind, to change your reality. Next page, please. We are rolling here today. Woo! All right. Napoleon Hill also talks about the quality of your life can be determined by the quality of the questions you bravely and honestly ask yourself. One thing I know about all of us salespeople, at many times we've got them fooled, don't we? Everybody else, a lot of times they look at us and say, oh, that salesperson, that so-and-so, they're so positive, they're so outgoing. But we all have our moments, right? During this furlough is your opportunity. And even, again, some of you that are working, take the time now to ask yourself these honest questions. It's that reality check. It's cleaning the sinuses. It's trying to become the person that you want to be, not the person you're supposed to be. Here's just a few questions. Why did you choose to get into sales at the first place? Why? What was it about selling that attracted you? Is it the interaction? Is it every day is different? What is it? What is it about that? Are you feeling that? Are you getting that in your current customer or your current role? Or let me ask you this. Did sales choose you? I know many people that never thought at all they would get into selling. There's a great book here, I'll talk about it in a minute. It's Accidental Salespeople. A lot of us started in hospitality at the front desk, and we were pretty good at the front desk, so they made us front office manager. And all of a sudden, then they said, you know what? Hey, you're pretty good. You want to get in sales. Sales chose us. But right now, if you had to do it all over again, would you choose sales? And this is vitally important at Me Incorporated. This is vitally important now during furlough to gain clarity, and it's vitally important when the recovery happens and what we're doing now to get to the recovery. Do you really enjoy sales? If yes, why? What is it like? I talked about that before. And here's the other hard question. If not, why do you stay? Now, I know I'm here to talk about how to help you be better salespeople, but I'm also here because every one of you, I want to make a difference. I'm not trying to sound like Tony Robbins here, but the reality is some of you maybe have decided in your mind that you don't want to be in sales. Now's a good time to make that transition. Now, and again, I don't want to hear say, well, that Bob was talking about we should all get out of sales. No, it's the greatest profession in the world. If it's something you really have in your heart, because if it's not really who you are, you're never going to do the things to help you get to where you want to go. Next, do you really believe in what you do? And of course, do you believe in product and your service? Do you believe in that XYZ hotel? Do you believe in the ABC attraction? Do you believe in the Bright Star AV? They do a great job. But I'd like you to dig deeper, okay? How important is the craft, is the art of sales? You think about it, look what's happening to our economy. Because sales are not happening, because there's supply demand, there's all kinds of chaos. Look what's happening. In our economy, this democracy, nothing happens until something's sold by somebody who can buy it, to somebody who can buy it. Do you believe that sales is a worthy craft? Do you believe it's an honorable profession? I think it is. Now we all have the bad images of those pushy, pesky salespeople that are trying to sell people something that they don't want with money they don't have. That's not what we're talking about. But what we do is vitally important. Look at that hotel. Look at your customer hotel. Look at those you're working. What we do matters to people. Look at all these people that are also furloughed, the front desk, the housekeepers and stuff. When this recovery happens, remember you have the impact to help them get their hours because of the business that you generate so that they can feed their families and grow their communities. I don't think enough salespeople really understand just how vitally important what we do is to our economy and to our way of life. It's so very, very important. What are you enjoying about this time off? Maybe there's things about your job or your customers that you're working with. Maybe you travel too much. Maybe now you're enjoying not traveling. Maybe you miss traveling. Have that conversation. And all of you have other questions that are deep inside of you that you need to ask now in this time of clarity. The bottom line is this: be the person you choose to be, not the person others think you should be. How many people do we know that get to 45 and 50 and they look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have taken a different path. Now is your time. You do what you want to do, not what you're supposed to or what other people think you have. Be true to yourself, and you'll just have a great life. And if you choose sales and it's what you really want to do for your own reasons, you feel it's important, you'll be amazed. You will be amazed how more successful you are when sales was you really believe and want to do what you want to do. I'm almost done with the preaching here. Hang on. Next slide. So what could we do? Just a few little things. And I know there's been great seminars. I've seen them, how to relax. You should work out, watch what you eat, meditate, do yoga. All of that is fantastic. But now I'm talking to you at Me Incorporated, okay? I believe in self-education. That is what I love about HSMAI. It's an educational foundation. My good friend Tom, who's on our call today, we were talking about, how important HSMAI is to us. And we are in the training business. We are in the sales and hotel education business. But it does amaze me that so few people invest a certain amount of time as a goal, as a structure, to help them build their craft. So here's just a couple ideas. Now, I'm going to tell you, you already know these. But I also believe there's a big difference between what you know and what you do. Every one of these is going to make sense to all of you. And many of you are going to say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I've heard that before. Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard that before. Then I want you to ask yourself, well, wait a minute there, CEO of Me Inc. If I know it, why am I not doing it? It's not what we know. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge put to action is true power. First thing, what should you be watching that will grow your skills and business acumen? And no, Killing Eve and the Ozarks doesn't count, okay? I threw the Ozarks in because I got hooked on that. I see the last season. It was wonderful, okay? That's not what we're talking about. We live in a time we're working remotely, or for those of you or that are furloughed at home, we have access to more information and more knowledge. It's sometimes almost overwhelming. Overwhelming. Set time to view things. Schedule times to sit on things to grow your skill set, your mindset, your abilities at Me Inc. What should you be reading? I saw a stat that was surprising. It is said that the average salesperson has never completely read an entire sales book. 95% of all salespeople have bought a sales book and have never gotten past the first chapter. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. You're going, I've done that, Bob. I got 3 sales books, and you read the first chapter and it was really good, and then you got busy and you forgot about it. Invest a half hour a day. Invest 15 minutes a day, an hour a day while you have this time. Get up early, stay up late, and read books. Now, I've got a few examples of just a small sample of all the ones that I have. There's a great one called New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg, and he wrote a follow-up book. If I was going to suggest any book right now, this would be the book you should all go to Barnes & Noble, and you can pick it up at the store, curbside, or order it. This is fantastic. This book will give you at Me Inc. so much knowledge on how sales has changed in today's world, but also how some of the fundamentals of selling that so many people poo-poo now because that's what people did before. Many of those skills today are the skills that make the best salespeople, even in this technological age, the most successful. High profit prospecting, okay? We are going into an era at this recovery. And for you at Me Inc., we've all heard the term a hunter or a farmer. Farmers are wonderful. They're great relationship builders. They're great at responding to inquiries. They're great at rebookings. But I'm going to tell you right now, we've always believed that at Star Performance that the hunters are the ones that succeed the most. The best Me Inc. corporations are those that have people that understand the hunt. Go out and finding the business that you want to have, not just the business you can have. Not all business is equal. Sometimes a smaller piece of business is more valuable than a larger based on the hole it fills. It's not going to come to you in the past, and it certainly is not going to drop in your lap. Become that hunter. And one other that I had to cross this out because this is a family show. You Are Bad rhymes with gas. And it's a Jen Sincero. It's a fantastic book. So just get one book and educate yourself at Me Inc. You'd be surprised at how much knowledge and these ideas and great thoughts come into your head. It'll give you more confidence and more competence to be better. Using your current Me Inc. customer. So I'm hoping that all of you that were on this legal thing called furlough will get your customer back, your job back. I really do. My thoughts for you and your family are please. I hope that happens for you. But what could you do now when you look yourself in the mirror? You know what you've done and you know what you should do different. Ask you those questions. When this recovery happens, if I go back to work in June, if it's July or August, what will I do different? And again, this is your honest assessment. You know what you need to do different. You know if you're not prospecting. You know if you're letting fear stop you from doing those things. What are you going to do different? What are you going to do more of? Maybe you're going to do more planning. Maybe you're going to get better at understanding revenue management. Maybe you're going to get better at the digital marketing side. What are you going to do less of? Do we get distracted? Do we do too much schmoozing and not enough searching? Have that assessed them now while you're waiting in furlough. And for those that are still working remotely, great time to do it. This is the last one. We'll get on to some actual meat of what we can do to really make things happen. But all of us have in our mind this great idea, this great, $1 million idea. How many of you ever seen somebody like on Shark Tank? They're proposing some great thing, and you're going, I've thought of that. Oh my gosh, why didn't I do it? Well, why didn't you do it? Because you didn't do it. So what's that one crazy, over the top, nuttiest, most likely it won't work idea that I've been wanting to try but never had the time, and now I do, never had the courage, work through it, to attempt? What are you waiting for? So again, now is your time. If you're furloughed, schedule time for your success. Schedule time to read. Schedule time for webinars. I'm glad you're on this one. Schedule times to really assess your overall skills. Excuse me. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? When you get back to that customer, when you get back to work, or what you're doing now, what can you different? Now is the time to take control. And there might be that one crazy idea that someday they'll be writing books about you with. So now is the time. Next page. The other thing is, don't forget, and I have to put the plug in, is for the great certification programs, hospitality business acumen, digital marketer, certified revenue management. Maybe you've got time. I would highly encourage that you do that. And finally, and then we'll get into some what we can do to go grow some business. Again, a lot of people are going through this pandemic in the stay in place order, and they're getting frustrated. I'm going to talk about the three levels of minds that our customers are going through, the three levels of thoughts and emotions, and how we have to listen for those and work with those. All of you have heard of Isaac Newton, I'm sure. Well, during the bubonic plague of 1965, don't turn it yet, Kathy, can anybody tell me, does anybody, and unmute your phone or send a chat to Sheila, does anybody know what Isaac Newton did during his, I believe it was almost like 8 months where he had to stay at home during the bubonic plague? Does anybody know? Anybody? Anybody? Turn the page, please. Well, while he was off, and this was from an article by Thomas Levinson at the New Yorker, he invented calculus. Okay. I don't know calculus, let alone inventing it. He helped create the science of motion in his time off. He helped unravel gravity. Okay. He didn't sit, and I'm not suggesting that any of you are just sitting there, eating bonbons and watching The Price is Right. Okay. But there are ways to make this time at home, or maybe for those of you who are working remotely where you might have a little more block of time in between things, to make it fit. I'm not suggesting you should invent calculus or the science of motion or gravity, but what could you do to help you build the best Me Inc. possible? Sheila, does anybody have? Yes.
I have to tell you that before you showed the slide, both Jeremy and Consuela said he discovered gravity.
Consuela, so my friend. Jeremy and Consuela, you win something. I don't know what it is. I'd give you a woohoo cup. Maybe you send me your address. I'll give you the famous woohoo cup and send it to you. But absolutely, they really just didn't wait for things to happen. So thank you for that. So again, my whole point is this: for those of you who are furloughed or have more time, make it count. Make it make a difference. And remember, don't do it just because others are counting on you doing it. Do it for yourself. All right. So that's the furlough. That's how to get that leverage on ourselves. You can hit the next page, please. So you're actively working on-site or remote. What now? What can we do to really maximize our effectiveness? These are things that I've been sharing with a number of our customers that we're still working with. I've shared these with other HSMAI chapters, some other associations that I've done some of these presentations for. The first thing is go ahead and turn to the page, celebrate your wins. Okay, for those of you that are out there, we know it's not easy. We know people are not always open to talk about the future yet. Some are, some aren't. We know that it's tough to maybe move something from a connect to quality to close type of situation. But I believe you got to celebrate your wins, okay? What's that hot dang sizzle thing that you've succeeded with? Give yourself credit for those. I know when we're all together back in our offices, we can share our wins. A lot of you have bells you can ring and stuff, but share those successes. It's so easy to be consumed with all the dire news and all the tragedy that's happening. That becomes who we are. You got to stay excited. When you did close something, what did you learn from it? What did you do right? What did you feel? How did you make it happen? And always, always, always look for the good in the good, but more importantly, look for the good in the not so good. So let's talk about actionable items. Next page, please. Time to plant seeds, build recovery, and talk recovery. And we're going to break it down into different areas. And you can go to the next slide there, Kathy. I tell you what, Kathy, you are one of the best sliders, fingers. You got the best click I've ever seen. You're incredible. Okay. First of all, when we're reaching out to people, and we're going to talk about reaching out to current customers, we're going to talk about lead sourcing, we're going to talk about actual prospecting. But everybody is at a different place from their mindset. Okay? There's three kinds of mindset: scared, frustrated, and eager. When you are reaching out to some people, understand that some of these people, their mindset is, I want to cry, I'm scared. Hospitality industry, we are often at the tip of the spear. What is one of the first things that happens when we have some downturn or crisis in the economy? People quit traveling. People cancel meetings. We saw it with the banking and the mortgage crisis. We are at the tip of the spear. March Madness has a whole new meaning for me being in the hotel business, okay? We've taken our medicine mostly. However, there are some industries where the furloughs are just coming. They've hung on, but now I've got friends that own manufacturing companies here in the Twin Cities, and they are now to the point where they can't get products from overseas. There's no way to get the supplies to continue doing it. Now they're going to be facing layoffs and cash flow issues. So there are still a lot of people that we have as current customers or we're going to be calling on that simply are in that scared motion. Listen for that. We'll talk about that in a second. Some, they just want to scream. They're over being scared. Now they're just getting frustrated. They're getting, I don't want to be at home. I'm mad at what's going on. I don't believe the news, blah, blah, blah. They're just frustrated. And then, and I am seeing more and more of this, many people are getting eager. I just want to get going. Again, we all know logically we want to do it safe and we want to do it the right way and the slow way. I know DC, you guys are in a hot spot. Consuelo, my friends in New York, that's a different world than what it is in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Absolutely. But everybody that you call on might be at a different level. And how do we know that? It's not so much what they say. Go back to Selling 101, that the best salespeople, the best leaders are the best listeners. So when you get somebody on the phone, which I'll talk about more in a second, listen for that tone. Listen for that fear. Listen for that frustration and a little bit of an edge of anger. Or listen for that excitement, that anticipation, those little glimmers of possibilities, those little glimmers of, you know what, we're starting to see things, not a lot, but we're starting to see things at the right level. I believe Marriott just said that they believe they've hit the bottom. They've hit, now it's going to move forward. Listen for that. That is crucial. If you start talking to somebody that's scared and you're talking as eager, you'll lose, obviously. If you start talking to somebody who's eager and you're talking about being frustrated, they don't want to hear about that. They are beyond that. They want to get moving. Adjust your approach. A lot of you have heard of neurolinguistics. This is the art of modeling. Listen for their tone, listen for their pace and their tempo, and really hear that more than just what they're saying. Crucial, important for that first contact back with some of these folks. Now let's break it down. Next thing, and this I've seen all over the board. We've seen stats on it. And I know Holly does such a wonderful job of talking about how to get in your LinkedIn presence. Absolutely. Use every tool in your arsenal without a doubt. emails and Facebook and all the social media things that work. Absolutely. But here's what the research is showing you guys. Phones right now are more effective than they've ever been by a huge margin. My friend Tom Clancy sent me the stat that the effectiveness of emails have gone down by 35%, but phones are now being picked up. More people at home, more people want to talk to people. Okay, it is amazing the connect rates we're seeing with some of the customers we're working with. And what's the benefit? Your phone is you at Me Inc. It's calming, it's confident. You are that reassuring voice. You are the product because you're the problem solver. We'll talk about how to allow the conversations to go to looking to the future and solving the worries and fears and frustrations that they have moving forward when they have their events, when they have business travel, whatever they're doing. In fact, you're probably going to find it. I'd love to hear a story. We have people that we do our consulting with that we're on calls with. They say, Bob, you're right. In fact, the hardest thing now about phones is to get people off the phone. Okay, they've been homeschooling kids and doing all kinds of stuff, and they will love spending time on the phone. And then understand your role. Yes, you're a problem solver. You are becoming a cross between a therapist and a bartender. You will be amazed. This maybe isn't good, but some of the conversations where they've gone with some of the salespeople I've worked with. Okay, be careful with that, but understand phones is the best way to first connect or reconnect with people. And the other thing is don't hide behind your monitors. A lot of people like to just send emails. And here's the problem: the email doesn't have that personal appeal. Now, use the combination. When we do our Build and Sales Pipeline program, we talk about a 6-touch system. And we have a regular customer, 1 touch every week for 6 weeks. It's a combination of everything. But right now, do always make sure you at least have as many phone attempts as email attempts. And you will be amazed at the number of people you connect with and the great conversations you have. All right, some practical applications. And by the way, Sheila, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, or comments on that? Is anybody still on? Have you all left? Has everybody gone out to lunch? Are we still there? No. Sheila, we're good? Okay, all right. So let's talk about current customers. They're the people that you had as customers, and maybe these some of the people you're doing the lift and shift with. They had business that was going to maybe on the group side was supposed to happen in July or August, and you've already moved them later on. Now you're following up with them. Maybe it's current business travelers, whatever. Obviously, this goes without saying. When you're talking with these folks, kindness, compassion, and understanding. And I really hope that all of you have already done this. This should be the thing that you've already done for sure. Now, I say that, and some of the people that we've worked with have not done it full force. They've done some spotty. All of those people that you have those current business relationships, we should be in touch with them, obviously. The message in the process. There's a research that my daughter, who's a wonderful marketing genius, sent to me, and it talked about when you first call somebody, if you just go into, hey, how you doing? What's happening? It's like, well, wait a minute. What about, don't you realize there's a pandemic going on? They always say, start with the elephant in the room. Gosh, I hope you guys are doing okay. Is your family safe? Get that on the table first. And then transition into a conversation. Now, with current customers, what we have found is asking them almost in a survey form. Say, listen, I know, we've picked your property, we've lifted and shifted. We're looking at that last quarter of the year, and we'll stay on top of that. What are you thinking? What are you hearing from your industry? When do they think things will get back more up and running? And by the way, can I ask? We've done business in the past. We really appreciate it, and we certainly understand why you had to reschedule or cancel this year's event. But when you start working with hotels again, what is it you're going to look for? Now, there's tons of research on that, but let them tell you, well, we're going to have special places of how people arrive. No longer will we have 4 people to a round. No longer will we have 3 people to a square. It's now going to be one person, and allow them to tell you what they want to see. And here's the thing what I have found again goes back to that listening. Don't push. Allow the conversation to go where the customer wants it to go. And I know that breaks the tenets of selling. We've all been taught in sales training, you have to lead the conversation. Not now. Allow it to go where it's going to go within reason. Okay. Um, but here's the deal. Sometimes the best way to lead is not lead. Allow them to get off their chest what they want. So, so important. And when we get our Q&A here, I'd love to find out what some of you are doing to absolutely connect with those customers and how often and what has worked for you. Every customer is a little bit different. Next, let's go to lead sourcing. Now is a great time to work on lead sourcing. And I broke it down into 2 parts, internal and external. Some of the internal, I think a lot of people have already been doing, but again, not enough consistently. 3 areas, and there's probably 10 we could talk about. Obviously, your orphan files. For those of you who are still working remotely or on site, you do have access, I would assume, through your CRM systems. All those old orphan files. Definition of an orphan file is a file that maybe somebody who did business with your property, your business, your attraction 5 years ago. Now's the time to do a file cleanse. Okay? Call them up and say, "Hi, Maggie, this is Bob with the Dewdrop Inn, and how are you doing? And is your company doing okay?" Say, by the way, we have a file here that we've had for years in our system, and during this non-selling time, we're just going to see if reaching out to people to see if your organization uses hotels like ours, or we should go ahead and just delete the file. We found that's a very good way of doing it. I have seen numerous cases of people that I'm working with on calls on Monday afternoons with using that approach now has engaged people to now talk about L&Rs and future opportunities. So I hope you're doing that. A CRM suspects list. All of you were building those lists that maybe you had done some touches to before. Maybe in January and February, you've left some messages, some emails. Start working those again. Lead source them, at least maybe do some research on those. Now, here's the one thing about research, okay? A lot of us have been told that you should research every lead before you call them, and I don't believe that. Now, there's those big pieces, those destiny accounts, absolutely do research. And yes, the more you know, the better. But you do not have to spend 8 hours a day researching a lead before you pick up the phone to try to touch them. Know a little bit about them. If you can learn more now when you have time, do it. But build that lead sourcing list. Another one is team member leads. Be talking to the team. Who do they know? Get the referrals. Talk to your vendors. Some things you've heard before, but are you actively building these into your process? Are you working on the internal leads? And set the goal. And the goal is the right suspects for the right business at the right time. I'll talk about that next. It kind of blends into what we're talking about here. Go ahead. Now, build your bull plan external. We've seen on some seminars and webinars, in fact, a great one hosted by HSMAI. And one of the speakers talked about the lag time. There's leading and lagging. Leading is the actions that you take, and the lagging is when that piece of business operates. And she said that on average, it was a 7-month lag time. Well, that's an average. Here's something that I recommend you all think about, okay? You need to think about building the bullpen, but for specific pieces of business. My biggest fear is that when things get moving back, what's going to happen is all of those groups that we have, we've lifted and we've shifted to the third and fourth quarter, we're going to have problems with supply. We might need more rooms now than we've ever done because we've moved those there, okay? And then maybe the first and second quarters, we're trying to get back. Maybe travel and groups and stuff aren't as busy. Many people will focus a lot of their attention on their short-term business. We all know from the stats that that backyard business is what's going to come back first. So many of us are going to be coming out of the gate with that, and you should, absolutely. But here's the deal. If you're only looking at short term, now I have definitions here: short, medium, large. That's different for every hotel. A big, huge convention center, what is short business to you is going to be different than, our friends at a Hampton Inn or a Holiday Inn. Okay, my friend Letitia's properties, maybe some of those, maybe short term is in the month for the month. Where, and I at the right here, I have connect, qualify, close, and consume. There are pieces of business when we get rolling back that you can connect with, you can qualify them, you close the business, and they'll consume within 30 to 45 days. Great. So within that period, you know the kinds of customers, the kinds of markets and segments, the profile of those kinds of customers to go to. But don't work just on those. What are your medium range? What kind of customers do you connect with now? You qualify, and it takes a few months to close, and they're going to consume in 6 to 8 to 12 months. Who are those customers? They're going to be different than your short-term customers, but you have to have a diversified focus. And then the long ones, the big fish, take longer to get into the boat. That could be something like you connect now. You start connecting now. You qualify it. They've got to go through a committee of 30 people to finally close in a year, and they're going to consume in a year or 2 years, but it's a big piece of business. Now, I know not all of you handle all three sizes of business, but when you're doing your lead sourcing, ask yourself, who, based on history, who tend to be the people that I could get to quicker and they can consume, get that cash flow going within 30 to 45 days? What's that next level of people where it's a little bit farther out? And the third, a lot of people don't think about that because, again, when you're a hunter, you go after the business you want to have, not just the business you can have. You go after the business, and sometimes a $1,200 piece of business, quite frankly, as you all know, could be more valuable than a $12,000 piece of business based on the hole that it fills. Now, in my little, and Ellen, I'm sorry of this, I used the wrong order. It should have been, the opposite on the arrows here. And here's what we talk about: connect, qualify, close, and consume. Is that's that method. If you got who do you connect with now? You qualify, you close, but then how far out do they operate, and do you get the cash going? All right, next slide. We're rolling now. My gosh, it's 53 after the hour. Woo! All right, here we go. Prospecting. It's okay to prospect. If you want to read a good article, look up a guy named Dave Kurlan, Kurlan, 10 critical things to do during a crisis. He's going to talk about prospect. We need the hunters now to plant those seeds. It's okay to go to those leads, those new opportunities. Again, going back to your CM, people that we had talked to before that never had gotten business, or we were just starting. It's time to get on the phones. It's time to email them. Yes, use your LinkedIn to drive that awareness, your Facebook page and all that, but pick up the darn phone and let's call them. Prospects expect it. In fact, I've heard some people miss it. I do believe also set goals for yourself. Okay? One of the other books that we are big believers in is a book called The 4 Ds of Execution. Often we focus just on sales. I know that's crazy. Well, Bob, we're salespeople. That's how at Me Inc. we get paid. Yes, but sales happen based on activities. He talks about setting goals right now for your KPIs. And we all know what the KPI is, right? Key performance indicators. It's those things you do to set goals. This was an example that he used. Set a goal on a weekly basis to, let's say I'm going to pick up the phone 15 times. I'm going to dial 15 new prospects. And out of 15 new prospects this week, I'm going to see what I get. Maybe the first week you dial 15 times and you connect maybe with, okay, maybe 4. Let's go with 5. You're good. People want to talk. So I've dialed 15 times. I've connected with 5. How many of those did I qualify? In other words, they have a need and fit. And then how many of those, and this was his eye, did I close for a virtual follow-up meeting to talk more about their needs and maybe do a virtual tour? And his point is you could use any of the key KPIs, but measure them. And here's the beautiful thing about Me Inc. You're not competing with anybody else. You compete with yourself. So this week, let's say I set a goal for 15 dials. I did 15 dials. I connected with 5 people. 3 of those were qualified, and I set up 1 virtual meeting. Great. Now next week, I'm going to shoot for 20. I'm going to up it a little bit. I'm going to do 20 dials. Maybe I'm going to connect with 7 people. Maybe 4 of those are qualified, and I get 2 virtual meetings. Compete with yourself now. And part of this is staying in the game. If because of the nature of what's happened, we haven't done that volume of prospecting, emails, dials, all those kinds of things, keep yourself in the game. Keep yourself ready to go so that when we start ramping up, you've already got your game legs for you. Okay? I thought that was great. One more thing is adjusting the cadence. I would not recommend what we normally recommend in normal times. 1 attempt a week for 6 weeks. A dial, an email, a dial, email, and what I call the delete file. That's once, you can do more, but a minimum of 1 attempt for 6 weeks. It works marvelous, you guys. Some of you have been in our sessions and we've talked about that. It absolutely works marvelous. I might spread out. I might work more accounts and once every other week just because of the nature of what's going on. And then when you get a hold of them, again, the elephant in the room, the survey approach. What are you seeing? Do you have must travelers that you're worried about when you have people in your organization that you're organizing travel with, as an example, that must travel? What's most important to you? Again, it's time. It's time. And I know that there's still people that are scared. There are still people that are frustrated, but we are sensing there's a lot of people that really want to talk about getting back. Now they might now be able to book now and operate and start traveling next week. That's not the point. You're setting yourself up to have more opportunities in that funnel to help you hit the ground running when the ramp up really, really, really does get going. And the last slide here. As I mentioned before, nobody knows. I use the joke, Amazon doesn't have any crystal balls. Nobody really knows. And again, there's worries of it going away, then it coming back and all this. None of us can do anything about that. But right now, okay, take this time. If you're furloughed or if you're working remotely, you might have some more time to revamp, reframe, and reengage. Decide, is sales really something I want to do? If it is, how can I make Me Inc. the most valuable entity with my one customer? Maybe there's a different path that I want to take, and what do I have to do to get it? I do believe, okay, that if I had a crystal ball and look back, there's going to be a lot of us, as how tragic as this, and if any of you have lost family members to this COVID-19, my heart and prayers go to you. From my heart, I mean that. I don't know how I would deal with that. But there's a lot of people that are going to look back and say, while it was a terrible situation, in many ways, it was the best thing that could have happened to me right then and there. It made me change what I do, how I do it. It changed how I feel about what I'm doing. And I'm better for it. And that's my hope for all of you. Questions and answers. Sheila, do we have any questions? As I babbled on for a whole hour there. By golly, an hour goes fast. Any questions, thoughts, or ideas? Oh, I can't hear you, Sheila.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Hello? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here's just a comment from Mike. He said, great presentation, Bob. And then Consuela commented, it's interesting to know that phone contact is gaining back some cachet. And then also that it was a good point to not over-research some accounts. It can negatively affect productivity. And then Daniela commented that she loves hearing that people are actually picking up their phones, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we have.
And what's interesting is we've been reading that, and Tom, who works with me, who's on the call, is a master research. He does so much researching, and he's the quintessential. So he sent me that, but the customers I'm talking about are now validating. So you guys set that goal for yourself. Pick up that phone, have conversations. And again, we'll get through this, and I know we've heard that before, but we will, and we'll look back and glad we have this connection with all of our HSMAI peers and great leaders like Sheila and Ellen and Kathy to lean on. And from there, we'll be fine. Any last thoughts or questions, Sheila?
Linda said, Bob, I love that phones are coming back. So that's our last comment or question within the boxes. So I'll go ahead and wrap up. So Bob, thank you so very much for your time and your efforts today. I really love the section where you discuss thinking, planning, and acting differently, as well as your suggestions on focusing on me, Inc., and celebrating wins. And for all that joined us, we hope you gained some key takeaways. And remember, you will receive a link to today's recording. And on behalf of Ellen Wilson, Managing Director, and our entire advisory board, we look forward to your participation at our next webinar, which will be on Wednesday, May 20th at 12 noon, as Jennifer Hill, Vice President of Client Solutions at Calibri Labs, will discuss COVID-19 hospitality impact and recovery, focusing on the Washington, D.C. market. And lastly, I encourage everyone to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and also check out our website at hsmaidc.org. This now ends our webinar, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And again, Bob, thank you so very much.
Thank you. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.